Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, we're on a fairy tale ride where a character has even mostly died, and there's an excellent display of Sicilian pride. That's right, we're talking The Princess Bride. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hello there.
And Joel Killingsworth.
Hello.
I had to cut Joel off there so I could try and make Andrew choke on his drink.
I was trying to take a sip of water, and then you were like, we're starting right now.
We're going for it.
Oh, I guess I have to stop
Yes.
drinking.
Yes.
And start breathing.
Yes.
Adapt, improvise, overcome.
I did that.
So, as we've already alluded to, we are talking The Princess Bride today,
A true fairy tale classic that is in very high regard by many, 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 many people.
It's kind of it was sort of almost a cult classic that became a nostalgia classic.
It is a cult classic.
Yeah, I think it fits the definition.
It did not do well at the box office. Whenever it came out, they did not really understand how to market it.
No.
And it just didn't do anything at the box office. They still considered it. It didn't bomb.
Right. It just did.
It just kind of existed. I think it broke even.
It whelmed.
Yeah. But in the
whelming.
In the latter years, it has become a beloved fairy tale classic.
Yes, the home video sales, and then
That's
future times the DVD sales.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah, that is in fact how it works. But before we jump on down just talking about all Princess Bride all the time.
Into the pit of desolation?
Pit of despair.
Pit of despair, yeah. I'm going to start it with a D.
Yeah. Oh my. We're going to talk Joel's face. We're going to talk about some other fairy tales first. So these are fairy tales in film. We've all chosen films. And maybe some others that have come before or after Princess Bride.
Actually, yeah, I guess we can all do films.
Oh, were you not doing
Were
a
you
film?
going to not do a film?
Well, no, I had a film picked out, but I could pick a.
I mean, you could just suddenly change your mind, I suppose.
I could suddenly change my mind, and you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, he's going to make a liar out of me. Is what he really.
These are all films except for the ones that are not.
Well, we have to have more representation than just movies.
I mean,
that's fair.
That's fine.
Yeah,
if you want, it's cool.
Yeah. Do whatever you want around here, apparently.
I will need to go last, though, because I need to look up some stuff.
All right, we're going to let Andrew go last. Do you know roughly when it was released?
The TV show?
Whatever you're talking
about.
Whatever it is.
Yes, I do.
When was that?
Give me an era.
Soon, recently.
Soon.
Okay.
Soon.
Soon. It hasn't come out yet. But when will it be now? Okay, well, on that note, we're going to back things up into the Wayback Machine. We're going to start with me then.
Okay.
In an attempt to put this in some kind of chronological
Mine
order.
is definitely the most recent.
All right, there we go. So that's what I was trying to get out of you.
Soon.
It's what I got soon. So it's definitely the most recent. It hasn't happened yet.
Soon, TM.
So we're going to kick this off with a little, another chunk of 1980s whimsy and talking about Legend. So now this is a 1985 release and it is starring Tom Cruise. This is one of his first roles, like his third role, I think.
So so that means he's like in his early 20s.
Yeah, I mean, he's like 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
He's really young in this.
I've never seen this film.
Right.
Also, apparently very sad.
It's not.
I'm not here to tell you it's a good film. I'm just telling you it is a film that exists. Tom Cruise is your lead, if that does anything for you. Tim Curry is your villain, if that does anything for you.
You've already sold me on Tom Cruise, Tim Curry.
All right, well, hold on. I got another one for you.
TC.
I got another one for you. Directed by Ridley Scott.
Oh, yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah, right? Like, so if this informs you of what this kind of is going to feel like. So basically we have the forest boy, Tom Cruise. Who,
FB.
He
FB with the TC.
He's literally a forest boy. I think he is technically an elf. I think.
Like he doesn't live anywhere. He's just one day he was walking through the forest.
Yeah. Yes.
This is Red Riding Hood with less supporting cast.
And has heavy duty amounts of whimsy where you have lots of fairies, these kinds of things that he interacts with, right? So he's very in tune with the magical side of things, including unicorns, who are central to the plot. And he encounters a princess who is a name I have forgotten because she only did things up to a point and then kind of just disappeared. Mia Sarah, right?
So with a C or an S?
S.
So MC.
MS. You got it from me, then you just completely messed it up. Anyways, so she is enamored with the unicorns because they're so beautiful, right?
Okay, yeah.
Well, off to the side is darkness. Literally, that's Tim Curry's. He's the devil, but he's just darkness, Lord Darkness, or whatever. He is plotting to take over the universe, the world and the universe, through the power that is within the unicorns. But because they are so pure and so uncorruptible, he can't do anything, influence them at all.
Directly.
Right. Until fairy forest boy himself, Tom Cruise, lets his princess would-be lover touch one of them, and it is rendered impure by the human touch. And now suddenly it opens this ability,
this gate,
or the ability for evil to influence the unicorns, and hijinks ensue from there. So it kind of becomes it's a fairly classic fairy tale. The princess gets kidnapped, these kinds of things happen, but it goes from there. And I'm not here to tell you that it's got like a 6.3 on IMDb. It is not a stellar example of cinematography or the film craft, and it's definitely limited by when it was made.
Yeah.
And the writing is questionable at times. But, Tim Curry is just full-on villain, which is always spectacular. Tom Cruise is not quite, his Tom Cruisiness yet, but he's getting there, and you can tell.
I think the first real Tom Cruise performance was Risky Business.
Risky Business might actually have been before this.
I'm pretty sure that was his first.
That was his first.
Yeah.
Is it first or second?
One or two.
We should know these things, but we don't. Because don't look them up.
Yeah.
We just wing it.
Yeah, because that's...
you can look it up.
I am trying to. Right
now. We have the world's information in our hands.
And we choose to not look at it.
We actively choose not to use it.
This is why Americans are ignorant.
Okay, so Joel, what is your choice?
So we're moving up in the timeline. We're not quite too soon yet, but we're going to go to not that long ago, relatively speaking. Some of our younger listeners, 2007 might be that long ago.
God, that was so long ago.
So long ago. That
feels like it
15 years.
Oh, don't say that.
It doesn't seem like that long ago, but that's how long ago it was. Moving past that point, we're talking about Stardust.
Ooh, yeah.
So with Stardust, we have our protagonist, Tristan, who is not a forest boy. He is a village boy. And
VB.
Stop.
And he lives in this village next to a wall. And at a certain time and at a certain place, you can walk through a break in the wall and you kind of enter this fairy world. And he is trying to get with this girl, and she's like, "I'll marry you if you go bring me that falling star," as they just witnessed a shooting star in the sky. And so she's really just kind of putting him off. But he takes her.
This girl is super out of his league. Kind of thing. Yeah.
But he takes her at her word, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go do it." And so he ventures into the fairy world, and he ends up finding the fallen star, who is a woman, because in the fairy world, stars are people.
Mm-hmm.
And
specifically women, apparently.
And this one, at any rate. And he gets embroiled in a giant kerfuffle because stars have, through one means or another, they have really either rare, like their body parts are really valuable to the dark arts, and things like that. And so he ends up kind of caught between this power struggle between these princes who seek the star for their own political gain, trying to ascend to the throne, and this coven of witches who seek the star in order to consume her heart and regain their youth.
Yep.
Kind of your typical witch refrain there. And so from there, hilarious and fantastical hijinks ensue.
And that's the one that has Robert De Niro as a gay pirate?
Correct.
Sky pirate?
Gay sky pirate, yes.
Yeah. So that whole like the entire pirate section is absolutely hilarious.
It also
Yeah.
has Henry Cavill.
Oh, you're right.
Yes,
It does, doesn't it?
As a minor role. He is the girl that Tristan is besotted with at the start. He is her fiance.
Oh,
Well, and he's so young at that point.
Yeah.
Too,
Yeah.
because he's maybe like I think 2 years older than I am.
I don't know. I have no idea how
he's,
old Superman is.
but it's also worth noting that the lead is played by Charlie Cox,
Yes.
who is more recently known for Daredevil.
Yeah, Daredevil fame.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, this is one of those movies where you watch it and you're like, oh, I know this person. Oh, I know this person. So Claire Danes is the star.
Yes.
Mhm.
And in an absolutely phenomenal performance, Father Weasley from the Harry Potter series
Mhm.
is a goat turned human.
Yes.
Yes, and it's
Yes.
absolutely incredible.
The voice of the narrator is Ian McKellen. So
Yes.
like there's talent oozing.
Star-studded cast.
Michelle Pfeiffer is the witch, the lead witch.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so like there are a ton of names and faces you would recognize in this movie.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, but I remember enjoying it when I did watch it.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny because there's so many stars. It kind of flew under the radar, when it came out, which is surprising, just given, the number of star or the amount of star power that's in it.
Yeah, which is funny because it matches Stardust, the name.
Yeah. It's almost like they were trying. No, that's not what they're just trying
No,
to sell
they
a
were
movie.
they were just trying to get as many big names as they could.
Yes.
But I guess whenever it came out, I never even heard of it until basically you kind of like pitched it to me a couple of years ago.
Well, I mean, I saw it in theaters, but it was the Dollar Theater.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where like, yeah, it had come out, but I didn't run out to go see it. I feel like it wasn't marketed very well.
Well, it was based on Neil Gaiman
Yes.
book.
Which is also, I think the book and the movie are pretty different.
They are. The ending, I don't know so much. I didn't actually read the book, but I kind of got a synopsis of it. And the through lines are similar enough. They're kind of moderately generic fantasy through lines.
Mhm.
But the ending in particular is sort of a bittersweet fairy tale ending in the book.
It's very Neil Gaiman-esque.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas the movie, everything gets tied up with a nice pretty bow.
Yeah. But it's very, very heavy on the whimsy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we are now moving forward, and my initial call was going to be Onward, which is a good modern fairy tale that Pixar did.
And it would be more modern than than Joel's pick.
But not quite soon.
Not quite soon.
Yeah. So this is actually, okay, so this came out in 2018.
Okay.
It is Hilda. It is basically an animated TV series that is based on the graphic novel series of the same name by Luke Pearson. And the graphic novels have a really cool art style and stuff. But so this is basically the adventures of fearless Hilda, an 11-year-old blue-haired girl, along with her deer fox, Twig, moves to the city of Trollberg, where she befriends even the most dangerous monsters. And essentially what this kind of pulls a lot of Norse mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically just kind of, an episodic show of her kind of going through and experiencing different, just different little like, whimsical creatures, I guess you could say. In the some of them are very large trolls. Some of them are like big cloud monsters that affect the weather that she has to most of the time bargain with in kind of ridiculous ways to make sure that they don't, harm the city or harm her friends, or, whatever. And then there's also these little small elves that are basically just they're like house elves, kind of like the borrowers, if that makes any sense.
All right.
And they're really small.
Those are very different from house elves, but yeah, okay, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And the quirk of these little house elf kind of guys is they love bureaucracy. So essentially, like she has to sign contracts and figure out ways around the bureaucracy to get them to like move out of her home,
requisition the right form.
Yeah. And
that's good.
And it's just like small little quirks like that, which it takes a general fairy tale premise and it kind of modernizes it a little bit to be kind of like the quirky and funny and sometimes deadpan comedy to be. But the show itself is really cute. It's on season 3 now, and they actually have a movie that came out for it. And totally worth the watch if you have kids or if you just like these kind of shows. It's very chill. There's no drama or anything. You know, all of the stories and plots that happen in each episode are always resolved. And if there is any unresolved things, it's probably going to be resolved in the next episode.
Yeah, and looking at the art style, because I'm looking at pictures of this on IMDb, the art style is very it's adorable.
Yeah, it's super cute, and it actually works really well with the it takes place in a very fanciful world where like there's these little like cloud dogs that just kind of just like float around, and they just have little tails, and they're basically like cows or sheep, I guess. Yeah, and like you can
just kind of ubiquitous.
Yeah, you can just kind of herd them around or whatever, and you can like bounce off of them and stuff. It's a super cute show. I totally recommend it.
Yeah, when you said the name, I could place the art style. But I couldn't place anything beyond that. Like looking at, okay, this is definitely who I thought it was going to be when you said it. Because I've seen it maybe like kind of memes or, Tumblr-esque posts, but I haven't actually watched the show.
Yeah, so totally recommend it. Absolutely. It's we've only watched season 1 and 2, but we're going to at some point sit down and continue watching it.
Yeah, that's what most of the show is about, is us just pitching things to each other.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, sometimes it's just like, we've all seen this, but other times we're throwing out stuff that people haven't seen.
Well, yeah, I mean, because whenever I was like, wait a second, we always just do movies. We need to do other things that aren't movies. And I haven't read enough fairy tale books because it's just not really my thing. So I was like, I had to pick something else that was not a movie.
Well, there you go.
Yep,
and you did. Success.
Yep.
Well, Andrew successfully chose not a movie.
And the thing is, he was right. It is soon because it's still in production. Like there's more
there's
stuff.
a season coming up.
So like it worked soon.
He got away with it. That
I do know what I'm doing sometimes.
Well, now that Andrew has diverted us away from movies and into TV shows, it's time to turn right back to movies because that's right. We're talking about The Princess Bride. And Joel?
Yes.
You're on deck.
Yes.
For a synopsis.
All right. So, synopsisizing.
A very old movie at this point.
The Princess Bride. Yeah, this came out in 1987.
Yeah, something like that.
And we follow, at the very beginning, we have a narration of a farm boy and a farm girl falling in love. And then he doesn't have any wealth to speak of for them to set out on their own to start a family and have a place for them. So he goes to sea and to make his fortune, kind of thing. And he just immediately dies. So the girl Buttercup is completely grief stricken, but she's kind of the quintessential fairest lady of the land. And so the local prince takes an interest in her, and her true love being dead, she says, well, why not? And ends up betrothed to the prince, only to the week before they are set to be married, she is kidnapped by mercenaries. And they set off across the ocean to an uncertain future. When it becomes clear that they intend to do harm to her and that she doesn't really have a good way out of this, hope appears in the form of a masked man following them mysteriously. And many battles and hilarious hijinks ensue.
And this is all within the realm of being a storybook told to a sick kid. In normal time
by his grandfather.
But it is an adaptation of a novel, which
it's so meta.
Yeah,
it really is. And then you have the little, the kid Fred Savage with his little interjections. Wait, but Grandpa, that's not really what happened, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so on to some scores.
Right. So we have 2 separate scores that we use. The first for our technical review across our 4 pillars of review, that being spectacle, performance, score, that is the music, and plot. And we average those out across the 4 of those and across the 3 of us. And then we have, separate from that, an entertainment value score. And we keep these separate in order to represent those times where you have perhaps a work that's not technically that great, but you just love it anyway. And so those are going to be different. And the reverse can be true, where it can be technically sound, but just was a complete miss for you.
Or just a bore. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, we have a technical score of 7 out of 10.
Okay.
So decent, respectable.
That's respectable.
Yeah.
The film had a very, very low budget.
Yes.
And a criminally low budget for the amount of effort that the characters put into it, or the actors put into it.
Yeah. And then, however, you can tell that the cast just absolutely gave their all in this, and it comes through very cleanly on screen. And as a result of that, we gave an entertainment value of 9 out of 10.
Yeah. And that's pretty respectable, because this is ultimately oftentimes viewed as like the quintessential classic. It's going to be quoted to you by people. If you haven't watched it, by the time you hit college, people are going to be pushing you to watch it.
My sheet just updated.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, Andrew thought the score was different.
I thought the score was different. I was like, that's wrong. Nope, that is correct.
Okay, it's good. We can move on.
The miracles of technology.
Yeah. So talking about the low budget, right? That is kind of front and center. What you're going to notice going into this film is that a lot of the effects are just kind of lame looking. The actors are doing a really fine job, and they're doing their best, and the writing is fun and quippy most of the time. But the sets all just, I mean, like the rocks look like paper mache,
which they probably are
paper mache.
and the like we mentioned that there was a whole sequence on the water, like 100% recognizable soundstage water. Like this is not, they didn't even try to make this look like an ocean at all.
Well, so one of my favorite quotation mark special effects part of the whole film is whenever they're in the fire swamp. And he gets attacked by the large possum, which is literally just a guy on all fours, just in a possum suit.
Yeah, rat.
And whenever they're
a rodent.
Whenever they're fighting, like you could literally just see the guy's hands. Like it is. I laugh every single time. And the thing with this film is it's not this is so bad it's good. It's still a good film, and it's very entertaining for the most part. But yeah, it suffers very heavily from the lack of budget, but a lot of the music is what really kills most of it.
Oh, that's interesting. There's definitely a very dated 80s synth sort of feel to everything. But at the same time, it strikes me as, one, it's very recognizable, right?
Yes.
Like it's you're not going, when you hear it somewhere else, if you've watched the movie a couple of times, like you're going to know where that music is from. So that's a check mark. And then like it in terms of carrying the emotion of the film, like it more or less did its job. So like
there are definitely a lot of times where it feels like it's more of a vacuum, where there's just like there's nothing to like back up whatever's happening on the screen, to where it's just like anything would be better.
Interesting. I was actually surprised by the music, because it's not something that you focus on when you watch it casually, because it's all about the dialogue, which is, if there was any budget, it was in the writing room, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it helps that they're working off of an existing novel, although I'm fairly certain, again, it's a bit different from the actual storybook itself. I think the big thing here is, while the budget isn't very high, and maybe, what they could do for certain things wasn't all that great, there's a lot of heart and a lot of charm in it.
Yeah.
Where you can really tell that everyone was kind of selling out to make it work.
Well, I think I figured out where all the budget went. It went into decking out Fred Savage's room.
Oh, his room is like a kid's room.
He's
perfect.
The quintessential spoiled kid.
Yeah. I actually was going to go a different way and say that it went into budgeting for Andre the Giant's beer consumption.
I mean, probably. Yeah, I mean, it's a really fun film, and it's definitely, if you've never seen it before, and you like, just kind of, just quirky, fairy tale-esque films, especially if you like Disney films, that kind of stuff, like this is exactly kind of your bag.
Yeah, this is a quintessential fairy tale set in a framing story where you get kind of the grandfather kid and the kind of the sweet interactions of the kid coming around to appreciating the old codger kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I think ultimately the thing that leaves its impression on you from this film is the clever dialogue.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there is a lot of just really quick comebacks and one-liners and plays on words that make this a eminently quotable film.
Very, very, very quotable film.
As you know, the concept of media review is centuries old. Really, that's all this is, except that instead of providing a spoiler-free review, we're sucking life. We've just sucked 30 minutes of your life away. We might add on another hour if you stay with us through the intermission, but I really don't know what spoilers would you do to you. So let's just say that before you go, check out the rest of our content at spoilersintendedpodcast.com. And if you do stick around, do tell us, what did these spoilers do to you? And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest.
Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed a quick little intermission because we are straight into the pit of spoilers. If you didn't get the message, it is all spoilers all the time from here on out. So we're going to kick this off with a quick look at our 4 scores to go in round table format, each of us discussing what we gave. And we're kicking it off with Spectacle, and I'm kicking it over to Andrew.
Okay. Wow.
Because you, when we were watching this movie independently, you said, I don't know how to review this. And I was really curious as to where the hangups were. And I bet one of them was right here.
Okay. So I'm going to
give us a score.
Yeah. All right. So I gave it a 6.
Okay.
But I'm going to couch this in the realm of, we're going to sandwich compliments here.
Okay.
So the first and foremost thing is the sword play in this film is actually fantastic. It's very well choreographed, and it's relatively exciting for the mostly low stakes, I guess, or low energy. I don't know how to describe. That's the thing. I don't know how to review this film.
Well, they're not fast-paced action sequences where there's like big battles and lots of people are being killed per se.
Well, and there are actually stakes there because, like, hypothetically, both people are trying to kill each other. It's just they're both very gentlemanly about it, at least at the beginning.
It's sword play as a chess match.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the actual choreography for the initial fight between Inigo and Wesley is really good. And besides some poorly done acrobatics, which I don't think they had any stuntmen to do anything.
I don't think they could afford stunt people for this because I'm pretty sure every fight is just done by the actors.
Yeah. So, you have some limitations there. Totally fine. The one thing that really took me out a lot of the film, which is really mostly towards the end of the film, is just a lot of there's no interesting camera angles. There's no, there's really like just no actual cinematography at all. It's just like they, and this is probably budgetary concerns, but they basically just took a camera, they put it on a tripod or handheld it and said, here you go, here's your shot.
And scene.
Yeah. Which, and it was very much done like essentially a stage play.
Yes.
And that's, I didn't try and beat it up too much for that kind of, experience, I guess, for a viewing experience. And I really did like at the end of the film the big the pit of despair contraption or whatever that they had, like with all the water,
the water wheel,
and then the little like suction cups that goes on his ears. It's one of the things where anytime he moves, you can literally see them just like fall off of his head a little bit, and that kind of adds to some of the charm.
Yes, it does, absolutely.
Because you're like, they literally had no money and they still made whatever this is.
Yeah.
All right. Joel?
Well, I gave Spectacle a 7.
That's not similar. That's higher.
It's pretty close.
It is 1 point difference, sir. That is similar.
10%. Anyways,
Anyway, and for most of the same reasons, the budgetary restrictions on the effects really hurt this from a wow, that was an exciting ride perspective.
Yeah.
yeah.
And while you have the highlights such as the sword fight at the top of the cliffs and the really quippy dialogue all the way through, where you have really, really clever one-liners and back and forths and a lot of fantastic characterization going on and presented in an exciting way. It just ultimately is a cheaply made film at a time where fantasy in film was not really a mature genre.
Right.
Yeah, it was definitely treated more like a kid's kind of genre than it is now, where you have like The Witcher and Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and all these other kind of like big epic fantasies.
No Wheel of Time mention?
Speaking of, what did you give it?
I gave it a 6.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's a lot of the same issues. So interestingly enough, I think that the move to high definition televisions do horrible things to this movie.
And one of the reasons why, and this is just more of a technical thing, is because a lot of these films and everything were meant for interlacing. And whenever you remove the interlacing of a CRT TV or projection TV,
can you define that term? Interlacing?
Okay. I was not expecting to do that, so I'll come back to me and I'll
technical term.
Yeah. So, anyways, continue, and I'll give the definition.
I'm pretty sure it's the speed at which it reads.
No, that is wrong.
Never mind. Okay. He doesn't know what it is, but he knows I'm wrong. That's what's important.
Yes.
Anyways, so yeah, like high definition, 1080p and above does horrible things to this film.
Yeah.
It's very much for the soap opera effect, where you can really feel that every rock is paper mache.
Everything is just moving a little too.
It's too crisp.
Strange. Yeah.
You needed to blur some of these edges so that I could tell that this rock wasn't made last night by a 6-year-old because they were in a panic and they needed more rocks,
Okay, so interlacing is basically scanned in such a way that alternate lines form one sequence which is followed by the other line. So basically, just imagine you have one grid of, I'll say, 50 lines and another grid of 50 lines, and every other line is the same image, and then basically they just alternate back and forth.
Okay, so okay. I think I follow.
and the big difference though is that moving from projection CRT monitors or TVs, whatever you want to call them, to direct pixel translation is what causes a lot of the problems. Whenever you look at older video games that are played on newer monitors and stuff, they look worse than what they did because they were catered to the technology of projection technology.
Right.
And now that you have these really high resolution things that literally just translate pixels to pixels, it doesn't look as good because you're going to actually see the stepping of all of the characters and everything in there. Yeah. So whenever you have a low definition or standard definition movie like Princess Bride, or even like the original Star Wars theatrical releases, there is a very, it looks way worse on an LED or an LCD screen than if you just actually had an old CRT TV in your home for some reason and you watched it on that.
Right. So I just like to say that I started out with my guess of what interlacing was by saying, well, it's the way that it's scanned. He goes, no, you're wrong. And then he started his definition of, well, it's the way that it's scanned.
No. It's the way that it projects it.
But that's what it's doing, is it's scanning it onto the projection, right? Because it's tracking each line.
Pedantry strikes again.
Anyways. So yeah, basically the general idea here, and a highlight, something good. The costuming, they put a lot of budget in really costuming, good. Right? The Cini's costume was great. It's very detailed,
very Sicilian.
I guess I'm going to assume so, or at least their interpretation of what Sicily is. You go to Buttercup in her wedding finery, or I don't know if he was ever really given a name. The Prince of Gilder.
I think it's
Florin.
Yes.
Florin? No. The Prince of Florin.
Florin. Sorry.
Prince Gilder is
the opposing
land.
Yes. The Prince of Florin. Was he ever given a name?
Prince
Humperdinck. He was given a name. It's Humperdinck.
Humperdinck.
Say his name. Humperdinck. It's so quotable. But I think there was a lot of effort done there. I mean, going to the sword fights, there's definitely a lot of flourishes in there that aren't necessarily good.
For like technical sword fighting.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're part of the storytelling and less of an actual sword fight, right?
Yeah.
But I'll give them props, right? Because this is a thing that we've made fun of with a lot of other movies and the like, both on air and off air. When Inigo gets stabbed, he bleeds.
Yeah,
he bleeds a lot.
Yeah,
and it's not necessarily just like, oh, it's gushing blood, like you're like obviously blood, but like his he gets stabbed in the shoulder, his arm, his sleeve is soaked.
Yeah,
and like that's what happened.
Yeah,
so props there.
It actually does feel like a closer to realistic portrayal of actually like getting stabbed like somewhere,
and it's easier to do with the weapons that they chose for this production because it's all like fencing weapons as opposed to broadswords. These are small little stabbing implements, not hacking implements. So you can get away with.
It's fine.
Stephen, our resident weapons expert.
So fun fact, like a rapier and a quote unquote broadsword, like a hand and a half sword, they weigh the exact same.
Okay.
They actually have like the same. So like when people talk about like
the same
tang, like the same like hacking and slashing, you can do it with a rapier all day.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily fight that way. Like what he gets, he's not getting his arm slashed off. Your arm's off. He is getting stabbed. But yeah, it's anyways. Moving on. On to the performance. So I let Andrew go first on spectacle. I'm gonna let Joel go first here.
Well, I gave performance a 7.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Okay.
I actually was not expecting that.
Right. So generally speaking, this film is buoyed up by an absolutely phenomenal cast of supporting characters.
Yeah.
Cary Elwes.
Yeah, Cary Elwes. He does a decent job, but he is not the main.
Yeah, Cary Elwes and Robin Wright are your two love interests.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Humperdinck's not a love interest, but
I wasn't talking about him.
Well, I'm talking about people like Billy Crystal and Carol Kane who play Miracle Max and his wife, right?
The
like
witch.
That whole scene is like those two just taking the movie and saying, "No, this is mine."
Yeah. This scene, it's mine. I own it now.
Wallace Shawn, who played Vicini, does the exact same thing for like the first third of the film.
Mm-hmm.
But like the main characters do not have nearly as much personality, and with the main exception of Mandy Patinkin's Inigo Montoya.
Right.
He is in my view certainly the best portrayed out of the primary characters.
Yeah, because you have Andre the Giant, which is he fulfills his role.
Appears as Andre the Giant.
Yeah,
I mean it's just
it's just who he is.
Yeah.
And he basically plays the exact character that you would expect him to play.
Mm-hmm.
Wesley Cary Elwes. He just he doesn't have the punch, but also he's generally a parody actor, or a comedy actor.
This is kind of its own version of a parody, really.
It is. It's kind of one of those films that like you go so far that it kind of turns into a parody of itself, but not in a bad way here.
Yeah.
Because it's very entertaining and it's a lot of fun, but it doesn't go far enough to take itself too seriously, and it doesn't stay just in the realm of just like pure comedy.
Yeah. So Stephen?
So I'm going to change pace here a little bit from Joel. I gave performance a 9.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, the sets they were given were not great. And what they could do to move around with them wasn't particularly wonderful. But they were handed a ton of dialogue and they absolutely sold out on it. And I think that's part of it. It's not just that what was being said was snappy and could be a comeback, but also the inflections. When you hear people quote this, they're going to quote it in the way, you don't get, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya." You get, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Like you get, or like you said, Wallace Shawn, right, as Vicini. And I think even some of the limitations, like you've already said, Andre the Giant appearing as himself, because he at that point in his life was so weak that any scenes where he's holding Buttercup, she's actually supported by wires. He can't hold her weight. even though, I mean, he's an absolute giant of a man and, made his basically living off of being the strong man at that point, just because of the way his body had progressed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they made do with what they had there, where he was kind of the big giant dude, but he was also kind of comedy and not in like a funny, haha comedy relief. He's kind of the wise comedy.
Yeah.
Where, they'd be like,
the quiet observer.
Yeah. Well, and you do it your way, my way. Okay. I like my way. What's my way? When you get a rock, you hide behind the boulder. When he comes up here, you hit him in the back of the head. My way is not very sporting.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that is just like, oh, nailed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, like Billy Crystal, Carol Kane, just they take over the whole scene. Like that is their 5 minutes or whatnot on screen. That is just their movie for those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the other characters just exist within that realm. There's not really a point that I would even say was weak, just because I think they did a good job of making use of what they could with Andre the Giant. I think the failings are going to come up a little later in this review, from my perspective at least. So yeah, Andrew?
Yeah. So I also gave it a 9.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. That's my boy.
Yeah. So the one thing that really shines, and Stephen kind of touched on it, was just the fact that the performance for everyone, they really sold out to make it a fun experience for whatever budgetary restrictions that they had, and you can definitely tell that they enjoyed shooting the film, and all the characters had good chemistry together. Yeah, where like you could definitely tell that they enjoyed doing scenes together. As far as I can tell, like if they didn't, then they're very good actors. There you go.
Aha.
That's funny how that works. Yeah, it's funny how
either way
out.
They get a 9.
Yeah. But yeah, like the only thing, actually, I'm not a big Billy Crystal fan, so whenever he was like, every time that scene happens, I kind of just tune out because it's just not, I don't like, he has a very grating voice.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, he does though.
And it's just one of those things, I guess.
Well, see, that's where it's nice, because it's kind of like the MLT, right? Where the button's so lean, you just get just a little bit of Billy Crystal, and then you don't have to deal with him anymore. He's not a main character.
It's so perky. I love that.
If he was a main character, I don't know if I could really enjoy the film. But yeah, I think my favorite standout character is Vicini. Like he's just
it's the saddest part of the movie is the fact that he dies in the first 30 minutes.
30 minutes,
yeah.
Just because he's such a force of a character, and just his quotes are just so funny.
Yeah.
Just like, never get into a land war with Asia.
Yeah.
Inconceivable. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. And so what's funny to me is, and just to kind of rotate back with Cary Elwes's performance, I think maybe some of his limitation there is that ultimately he is the cool character.
True.
Right?
Yeah. He's meant to be
the dread pirate Robert, and he's very much so just the calm and collected, you get, and ego gets, oh, well, I hate to kill you. Oh, well, it's a shame I have to die.
The one thing I will say, I really like that Inigo Montoya is kind of the template that they used in the new Mask of Zorro that came out in 1998. For
new,
new,
quote unquote, almost a quarter of a century old.
Oh, let's say that.
It's so true.
But yeah, but he was kind of the template that they used for Alejandro Murrieta, which was basically the new Zorro in the film that gets trained up. But he is essentially a drunk that is bent on revenge to kill the guy that killed his brother, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And it's. And that's a pretty common story, but it's almost like exactly beat for beat, and kind of the same things where he was a belligerent drunk that was taught the ways of the sword to help
the CD. You told me to go back to the beginning. Well, I'm here. This is the beginning. He's just drunk.
Yeah,
he's at the beginning. Yep, that's where he is.
Yeah,
and I also think child actors can be a weakness, and for what little bit you get of him, I think Savage does well. I mean, he's kind of had his own brand past this point.
And this is before or after Wonder Years?
This is.
I think this is before.
I think this is either before or at the start of.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Joel just threw his phone on the ground, so we'll never know. We'll find out on that.
Lost to the annals of time.
Yeah. But I think he does a good job, and especially, and it's weird to call this the performance, but his interjections while things are happening, and then the way Peter Falk as the grandfather kind of be like, "Oh, well, I thought you were worried there." So I thought those were really great moments, not just as a performance, but also just as like the little beat of break of for the audience. Oh, well, this could be tension, but it's not.
Princess Bride was 87 and The Wonder Years was 88.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I was like, because this is still like, because this is definitely obviously before The Wizard, and just some of his other roles that I'm used to seeing him in. So every time I watch Princess Bride, I'm like, oh yeah, it's him.
Oh yeah, it's Prince Savage. Go figure. He's little. He's so small.
Okay, so we are moving on to the score of the score, and I'm gonna give it to Steven because he hasn't started yet.
Yes, perfect. So I actually gave the score an 8.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is truly impressive.
So I'm not gonna lie. I came into and I've seen this movie a lot. I'm not willing to say definitely the most of the three of us, but probably because I know Andrew hasn't only seen it a few times.
It is definitely not a film that I have actively seeked out, and I did not watch. The first time I watched it was when I was in college.
Yeah, I've seen this thing a lot, and I came in ready to be like, oh yeah, definitely this is going to be a point that it falls down on, and it's not going to be good. And I was like, wow, this is way better than I remembered, because I think they did a really good job in a admittedly cheesy 80s, somewhat parody-esque, over-the-top way, but that fits for what you're getting, of especially handling the moments that go from drama and tension to funny. So you have the moment where they're storming, quote unquote, storming the castle, and Andre the Giant is carrying, or Fezzik is carrying Wesley.
Yeah.
He's mostly dead still. And Inigo Montoya's revenge goal is getting away from him. So you have this big drama tension of him running, and he's screaming for Fezzik, come help me. He's behind the door.
Yeah.
And then he's like, Fezzik's just like, what do I do with I'm just going to put him in the suit of armor. And the music immediately changes to hit on the comedy. I was like, dang, that was actually really good. This was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Like I sat down and came in and be like, oh yeah, I know the performance is good. I know that the set pieces and the scenery looks bad. And I was like, but I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure the score was dumb too. And I was like, dang it, this was actually good. So I was honestly completely shocked to be putting up that score. So
very interesting.
Let's put up a juxtaposition, Andrew. What do you got? Oh yeah, no, I want to hear it. Let's have a huge
gave
swing.
it a 4.
I knew this was going to be a big swing.
So I will say that there are a couple moments that do have like good scoring to where like they hit on the right type of emotional pangs here and there. That was going to be one of my things. Was just whenever Montoya is like trying to knock down the door, and then he puts
and it does
puts
like
Wesley on
as he hits the door. Yeah.
Which is really good. But unfortunately, there's so many other parts of the film that are either devoid of music or just have like I swear it's just one person hitting a note on a keyboard for like at least like 2 or 3 minutes. And whenever I go this low on score, that means that it actively like took away from a scene from me. Where like most of the time, like I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to music. I'm like, oh, well, it didn't do anything for me. And that's probably like a 7 or a 6 at the worst. But then like there were definitely times where I was watching a scene and I was like, there's nothing here. And I'm just watching this and like there's just nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what really killed a lot of it for me.
Okay.
And yeah, like, so whenever there was music, it was fine. And there was a couple, like I'll say like a handful of good moments here and there, but for the most part, it really just actively detracted for me.
Yeah. And I would definitely agree that I don't think there are any like massive, amazing, like high points on the music, because I mean, it definitely was not, or at least as far as I know, it wasn't an orchestra playing this. They had, a couple people.
Yeah.
Like tops.
Yeah. And one guy in a closet.
Or one dude working really hard on a keyboard. All right. Time to do the bass. All right.
Yep.
That's it. All right. Now we need little drums. All right. No, little guitar. All right. We nailed it.
Yeah.
Joel?
Well, I was gonna say that I'm in the middle here, but the low end is so far down that I'm really just up at the top, and I gave it a 7.
Okay, yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
I already gave most of my
Don't apologize.
my reasons in the spoiler-free section.
Mhm.
But the biggest knock on this was, I mean, there's a mixture of some misses on moments that could really use with some dramatic underpinning. But also just like the style is really dated.
Yeah. Well, that's like whenever I said I didn't really know how to review this because I'm like, this is not a parody. It's also not a comedy, but it is.
But it
is.
But it knows it's funny.
Yeah.
Like it's such a weird genre of a film
It
that
really is.
because like if you're going into like a pure parody, like if we went and reviewed Robin Hood Men in Tights, for example, like that is
another Cary Elwes.
Yeah, a fantastic film.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those where like, how do you score the score? Because like you're not really there for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it for something like that, again, it's how well do you sell the shift from the high fantasy drama to womp womp, right?
Yeah.
So and that for me again was where I was so surprised. Like, wow, they really like worked hard to handle both sides. Like because on some levels it's really easy to look at this movie and say, oh well, I don't know if they realized that they were making something this funny. And then you hear something like that and like, okay, yeah, no, they knew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a very weird film. Anyways, continue. Sorry, Joel.
Yeah, no. So moving on to plot, I'm going to go ahead and take this one.
Go for
Sure.
it.
I gave plot an 8.
Wow. Okay.
Honestly, this movie is pretty tight. I think it mostly benefits from the fact that it's very simple.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of players. There's not a lot of convoluted chicanery. It's just
What you clearly cannot choose the cup in front of me.
okay. There are convoluted gags.
There we go.
Yeah, but that's not an actual plot point.
I know. Let me make my own gag on a gag.
But you've got the warmongering prince who has set up a scenario by which he can blame his enemies for a beloved soon-to-be princess being slain. And have a justification in the eyes of his people for going to war.
Right.
And that is in and of itself is a very simple scheme. And the things that it pulls in don't really add a lot of complexity to that. And so it's hard to mess that up.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't. So the main thing that I would kind of harp on here for plot is when you transition from the sequence of events that started by the princess being kidnapped by Vicini and co. and ends up with Wesley and the princess being retaken by the prince as they exit the fire swamp.
Mm-hmm.
And then, everything kind of falls apart for all of our characters. And then in order for things to get back together and the third act to happen, Fezzik and Inigo have to find Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
And they just hear him screaming because apparently him being tortured makes him able to scream loud enough that the entire land can hear it, 1. And 2, Inigo recognizes that, oh, well, the only person who could be screaming like that is the man in black. So that's where we got to go.
And then he finds the secret entrance.
And actually, sword. I don't hate finding the secret entrance with the sword because it's that level of mysticism surrounding, because he's entreating the spirit of his father to guide the sword, right? So like,
and then they play on it later on in the whenever he's fighting the six-fingered man. I don't even know what his name is.
Count.
It's
Count something or other. Anyway, but like that kind of fits the fantasy world that they've built, that part of it. But getting to that innocuous point in the forest in the first place is a huge stretch. But other than that, everything is pretty tight.
Yeah. So I gave plot a 7, and pretty much for the same kind of things. Like the whole plot of the film is actually pretty tight. Like there's no really big plot holes beyond the fact that he's just screaming in the pit of despair, and then they can hear him and they can find him. The only other problem that I kind of had with it was just it kind of was the Emperor's New Groove of like, how did we get here? I don't know. By all accounts, you should not be, And so the prince and the count or bad guy or whatever beat them to the other side of the fire swamp kind of thing. And it's like, well, if they could have just gone around, I don't know, like. It just felt like they just happened to be there because they just need to be recaptured.
Well, that one I didn't have a problem with because the fire swamp was in a valley, and because like when they enter it, they're like down in between two big hills, and so it's conceivable that there's
it's inconceivable.
It's inconceivable.
Well, basically they could ride all the way around it because it's not dangerous, and they had to go in because they were trying to avoid them.
Right, exactly.
Like it's one of those things where it's like it's a minor knock, but that's more nitpicky than anything.
Yeah, Count Rugen.
There you go.
Count Rugen.
Yes, which he's actually a great bad guy.
I mean, he doesn't do anything.
No, but I just stole 1 year.
Well. Okay,
I lied. That's a pretty good evil.
Yeah, it is.
That and then also the albino where he's like, so why are you here?
Well, even that and just the mystique built up around the character, the 6-fingered man.
Yeah,
he's just a dude with 6 fingers.
So I am continuing the trend. I gave plot a 6.
Oh wow!
Yeah, downward spiral we go.
Yeah, came down, and like I see your points about it's a fairly tight and I don't want to call it simple, but basic story structure, right? And honestly, I've watched it a lot, and you watch it for the snappy comebacks, the dialogues, and the whole like, oh, I'm marrying the lady from the common folk. So then I can pay these mercenaries to kidnap her and kill her on the border of my hated enemy so that the commoners will rise up and support me in this drive for war. I'm pretty sure I've watched the film, I don't know, like 8 times and never caught the fact that it was like a double play there, that it was actually the king or the prince trying to pull this off.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
I like honestly because that's not what I was there for.
It
yeah, like
plain English.
I know.
And like when they have the wedding, it's just like he's just gonna kill her. Like he talks about it.
Oh yeah, I know. Just went right past me.
Okay, all right.
Didn't matter. No. I'm actually saying that as a positive because while it is kind of basic, I was like, oh yeah, okay. They're trying to have some some depth here. I think for me, there's just one. There's a little too much happenstance, right? Well, if we had a wheelbarrow, well, there's one over here. And a Holocaust cloak, which one? What is a Holocaust cloak? I guess it's like a fire retardant, whatever. I
feel like that's a piece. It feels like I haven't read the book, so I don't know. But it feels like a piece of world building that you would get
or
in the span of reading a novel that you just don't have time for in a film.
But they still need
over.
it.
Yeah. They jumped over how they got to that point. Yeah. And you just pull it out. So just we have this item. We have this item. Oh,
true.
We find the man in black because the scream can be heard across the entire land because this is his torment. And does it fit the it fits the mysticism-esque, but it's also just kind of like, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna.
There's
let
only
that
one
slide.
man who could scream like that.
Yeah,
it's the man in black.
And like you sell out, like the performance sells out for it, right? And you let it slide, but when you actually kind of look like, that's pretty lucky. And the sword, and there's just a lot of just stuff like that, just kind of for me, just kind of adds up, where there wasn't enough going on in the plot to kind of counteract it. And I think my big knock is kind of the pacing. Honestly, the movie is very short. Like it's like an hour 40.
It feels way longer.
It feels way longer than an hour 40. And that's, if you're enjoying it and you're along for the ride and you're with friends and y'all are quoting the lines at each other, that's totally fine because that just means you have more enjoyment, right? When you're just watching it by yourself, there are moments when you're just like, man, get there. Because there are some movies where I've gone back and rewatched movies, for the show, et cetera, and I've been like, wow, that happened so fast. The point that I remember from this movie just immediately hits. Whereas this one is just like, man, get there.
Yeah.
And so that for me, I was like, okay, well that's got to count against it somewhere. I think this is the place for it. So
that's fair. Okay, so we're gonna move on to
the entertainment.
That was not planned. But it happened,
and neither was it executed.
I almost hit my mic. Well, I did hit my mic, but I'm going to start because I feel that I'm going to start low and we're going to end on a high note.
Okay, go for it.
And my low is only an 8.
Yeah, it's not so low.
That's
No,
super low. Let me tell you.
Well, okay, so like we've discussed on the podcast in previous episodes, my threshold of entertainment to rewatch willfully is an 8, and this is pretty much right on the line
there. Yeah,
And so whenever I watched Princess Bride, like I'd never seen it until basically someone kind of forced me to in college, and this is definitely one of those films where I don't really get why everyone treats it like it's just kind of like the best film ever created kind of thing. And maybe it's just the type of people that I'm around. I am around a lot of nerds, and a lot of nerds really like this film.
yes.
And this is definitely one of those where when I watched it, I was like, it was fine. And then like question mark. And then that was kind of it. And I've seen it a couple times since, and it's still just fine. Like it is definitely an entertaining film, and I enjoy very key moments of the film where like I love the clearly you cannot choose the cup in front of me and the sword fight and those kind of things. But like every other part of the film, kind of like, well, I could probably just go on YouTube and watch this little clip and I'd be more than satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and take it next because I can sense where this is going.
Okay.
And I gave Entertainment a 9.
Oh, all right.
And it's for me, this is something from my childhood that I grew up watching, that, the quippy one-liners and the dialogue is just ingrained in me and is always there, like a trusty quiver full of arrows to just shoot off for any situation, right? There is a line from this movie that is applicable to whatever situation you are in. And for that, I cannot give it enough credit.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And like, it is a infinitely quotable film.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, we spotted the trend. I gave Entertainment a 10.
Wow. See, I was right.
Oh, yeah. No, well, this is fairly predictable. And I think it also trends with probably, again, like I said earlier, probably who has watched it the most, which is probably me. Because, this was a movie that I'm pretty sure my sister introduced it to me. It's kind of that older siblings thing. And growing up, I watched a couple of times, but it was not popular, right? It was whelming at the box office.
Yeah.
It didn't do great. So then like college hit, and suddenly, all my friends know this movie and they quote it and they want to watch it. Like, is this popular? And did I like something like on the curve or ahead of the curve?
Was I the hipster?
Yeah. Was I ahead of this?
Am I eating kale?
Am I popular?
Yeah. No. Do I fit in? So this movie kind of lands in the same realm for me as Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Ooh, which also is one of those films that you can probably just watch YouTube clips and get all the good parts out.
Definitely.
Or you just sit with your friends and you all quote the lines to each other because that's all you're going to do when you watch it with each other. And I think that's really where this sells out. Watching it by yourself is just kind of, it's a film. It's not like the most amazing thing, but putting it on with a bunch of people around, and everyone's going to throw quotes at each other, and there's going to be all kinds of random hijinks that's going to happen around the movie really adds to it, I think.
Well, and it's definitely a film that it is more enjoyable with more people.
Yes.
And if you are watching it, you have a bunch of people over and you're just kind of all hanging out and stuff, and you throw it on, that is totally worth it because it is an unobjectional, fun film.
Yeah. So, and that's why I kind of put the Holy Grail with it, because both movies are objectively stupid. So they just are.
So I would argue though that Monty Python and the Holy Grail is much harder for people to palate watching with a group of other people, because the people that know the film are going to quote it incessantly.
Yes, and
the people that don't know the film are probably not going to enjoy it.
No, and that's true.
And you're probably going to be pretty lost on your first playthrough too, right?
Yeah.
Because I say playthrough, your first watch through, because that one really, like, even more so than Monty Python's other films, that one presents as a flying circus episode that just happens to have a through theme.
It just keeps going. Yeah,
it really does. Okay. Anyways, moving back to Princess Bride.
Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Sorry, I diverted us. I threw another film in there. Everyone's like, "Ooh, film!"
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally. I mean, it is a fun film to watch. It is not my choice of films. I'm sorry that, and for those of you who are mad at my top 5 sword fights this week, I like the fight is good.
I mean, on the flip side of that, keep an eye on the top fives because there might be omissions that are omitted on purpose, and that might be a preview for what's coming out
down
that week.
For a reason.
Mhm.
Although I will say, there are people online who will say, "Oh, well, that fight is referenced by people who are teaching fencing," and other people will come back and be like, "No." Fencers will say, "Hey, yeah, this tiny 15-second window is good fencing, and everything else is stupid. Don't do this." So you're gonna have some people who are like, "Oh, it's the best sword fight ever." I think ultimately it's not that it is technically the best sword fight. It's just the presentation of it as the chess match of, oh, well, clearly you're going to use Capella because on the rocky terrain, and then I would defend with Agrippa, but you would know this.
Well, it's definitely a good example of using a fight not just for like spectacle, but to characterize the people that are involved and get you involved in their journey as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree on.
Mm-hmm. And also the connection of those two characters, right?
Yeah.
Like, kill me quickly. Oh, I'd sooner break a beautiful stained glass, right? It's the respect through the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So. But yeah, no. So obviously I'm biased higher. And like, you're making a bunch of apology over here, Andrew, but you're handed it an 8. That's pretty high praise from you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still really like the film. It's, it's just not a film that, like, there are other movies around the same realm of theme, I guess, that I would choose over it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So. Yeah. But yeah, so great film. One of nostalgia's greats, I guess, is kind of the way to look at it. So, sometimes though, maybe a little rose-colored glasses, but always funny, always entertaining. If you haven't seen it, you should do yourself a favor, get some friends together, pop some popcorn, and put it on. But on that note, I do believe that is all the time we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.